Troy, I'm very grateful for your time and for you coming on to the podcast. Thank you so much.
Well, I thank you for having me. I mean, this is so awesome. And to see your amazing facility back there and then to hear what you guys are doing, like, I am so honored that you would have me on. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Before we get into the questions that I have for you, can you give us a little bit about your background and how you became an author to two of my favorite books? Because it's not the traditional route on how you got to be in this field, but give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, so I am actually a musician, and I, play guitar, play some piano, did some singing in New York, and had a record deal, all that stuff. So the way this all worked out was I was driving to take my son picking my son up from school, actually. And one of his gym teacher came out, Miss Judy. I will never forget it. She came out and she goes, she walks around to the side of the car. Miss Judy is actually, oddly enough, from New York as well. So, I knew when she's coming to the car to talk, there's something, up. It's not like she's just coming to say, hey, right? She's one of those no nonsense kind of people. And she comes up, she goes, so have you ever thought about putting your son in basketball? And I was like, no. Because at the time he was in choir, he was going to be a musician because that's what we do. And she goes, I think you should look into it. I think he has an aptitude for it. And so I rolled the window, we drove away, and I said, Moses, you want to, are you interested in playing basketball?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I love it. And from then on, it was like we were in this basketball world. So yeah.
Amazing. So it wasn't like you yourself were in the field and then you brought him in. It was more of a teacher feeling that he had potential to be something. And that's interesting. So how old was he at the time when she decided to approach you about that?
I think he might have been 8 or 9 or something.
Okay,
like that.
Wow. So very early.
Yeah, he was very young. Yeah.
Okay. And then how and is he still in high school now, or is he?
He is. This is his senior year. Going to senior year, we're actually taking him to he's going to school in Florida, specifically for basketball and stuff like that. So yeah, senior year. It's kind of crazy.
It's awesome. So since you've been doing this now, my math is awful, but for a long time, how has it changed since you first were on the journey to where it is now? Let's talk about basketball as you see it in general.
I think basketball is the same. It's still a wonderful game. If you get skilled and you get good at what you do, you can, you have a better chance at making your way in this industry. I think the thing that has changed a lot for young basketball players is obviously the entire planet experienced COVID. And so in the United States, that means that now the entryway to college is fraught with a lot more difficulty. And by that, I mean, now you're competing not only with high school graduates, you're also competing with JUCO, you're also competing with transfer portal, you're also competing with, kids coming up and down from different divisions. So, and then you have seniors that are now given an additional year. So it's quite the terrain for young basketball players looking to play in college. So.
How about in terms of how basketball is organized? How has that changed very much since you first started to where it is now?
Organized, I wouldn't say it's really changed that much as how it's organized. And by that, I mean, it's, in my experience, it's still very much, you have to, kind of like anything, be in the right place. I believe, with around the right people, around the right organizations. And that's, part of the puzzle. But as far as basketball being organized differently, I think it's still the same sports run by the same, people and organizations. So,
okay. Do you feel like parents are putting more of an emphasis on it now, maybe more than when we grew up? Is it a little bit different in terms of that? Like, are parents really seeing the value in sports?
What do you mean by seeing the value in sports?
So the reason I'm asking that is because on our side of the world, not that this is wrong, but there's tremendous emphasis on study, which there should be across the world, right? That's just the Asian culture. No matter you go to Korea, Japan, China, it's going to be like that, which I think there's a certain virtue. However, at the same time, some parents may feel like that's the only thing that matters, and therefore you don't participate in sports. However, with America going down the route of now NBA players are making ridiculous millions, so many
Right,
parents feel like their kid might be the next Giannis or the next LeBron.
right, right,
Like,
right.
have you seen that change at all because the NBA has changed?
I think the thing that's changed in aspect to that is really is the desire for the parents to want their child to succeed. And I
Right.
say that because um, our kids are also in Kumon, which is kind of like
I did
uh,
that when I was a kid.
yeah.
Like
So then
speed
you
math.
know, it's like it's not just sports. It's like
Yeah.
I think parents want their kids to succeed. I remember one of our sons kind of sitting down next to a kid who had been in Kumon, I think since like 5 or 6 or something like that, and he said he looked over and saw that I was doing the algebra, Kumon thing. And I think at the time, Silas was in 6th grade. And he said this like little maybe 7 or 8 year old looked over at him and saw that he was doing algebra and goes, like, whoa. It's like you're only on algebra, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I think parents in general really just want their kids to succeed.
Yep.
So I think if there's any heightened push on anything, it's look, I want you to be successful in life because I want you to be happy in life. I think, really is the big thing, no matter what it is, if that makes sense.
Sure. And
Yeah.
since you've been to so many tournaments, you've seen so many teams play, what kind of coach would you want your kids, if you started all over again,
Mm,
what kind of coach would you want your son playing under? Is it the most winningest coach at all costs, or is it
mm.
a coach that thinks about development, or is it something in between? Like, what, as a parent, what kind of coach do you want your son under?
Okay, honest answer. What I would want, one thing I want my son to, or my coach for my son to be, would be very focused on development, very focused on getting better, and doing all the things that, having measurables, saying, okay, so instead of this game wasn't good, what can we improve on? So let's say, we won or lost the game, right? Okay, so you normally shoot 30% from here or whatever, or you normally, are 80% free throw shooter, but this time, we missed. So what do we need to do to kind of help that? Because there's always going to be, at the age of middle school and high school, there's always the next game. It's like, as John Lucas said at one of the camps we went to, the Lucas camps or whatever, he said, no one's getting drafted from the 7th or 8th grade. No one's getting, so it's
We'll
like,
have to remember
let's
that.
focus. It's like, I know it's like, I know you guys, are like all into this. And you said this to the parents, but it's like, right now we need to get better. So, and you get better by measuring what you've done, knowing what your numbers are. And I would love a coach that would be like, okay, here's how we did as a team, or maybe go back and watch game film because it's something very important for them to do. And here's how you did as an individual. How can we get better? Even 1% better.
Yep.
We're not looking for like these huge shifts, but it's like, okay, what do you think you could do, and how do you think you can get better for the next game? And then measure it that way. As far as winning goes, I think it is important. I think, in life, it's like, there are measurables, whether you're working in a business, whether you're working in, whatever it is, and succeeding is a part of the thing. Losing is also part of it, and you got to be okay with not winning. But I think anyone entering into anything, the goal is to be successful. So
Right.
that would be something that would be also important to me. And then, something that I love that I watch when I see high level coaches like the Phil Jacksons, or I see, let me think of who else, Chauncey Billups, or, these guys that I watch. I noticed, or what's his name that just retired, or did he retire? Coach K. I think he just retired, I think
Yeah, just
recently.
retired.
They work like crazy in practice. In practice, we're doing this, we're playing, it's like game time, like why did we miss that assignment? Why are we doing this? Why didn't you do this? Blah, blah. But when the game comes, they're like this, for the most part, because it's like, look, I've already taught you how to do this. I need for you, I mean, I might call a timeout and call you over and say, hey, okay, ladies and gentlemen, and it's like, so we missed this. Like, do you understand what's happening? Point guard, center, whoever leader of the team, do we understand what's happening right now? Let's take a deep breath. Let's calm down and go out there and let's make it happen. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that would be awesome to have someone that kind of allows the players to use whatever they practiced, knowing that sometimes they're not going to get it. And that's part of our growth and development, is knowing that we're going to go back, we're going to watch, we're going to analyze, and then in practice, we're going to fix whatever we fixed. And I'm going to let you guys explore the game maybe a little more.
That's
Now,
awesome. Yeah,
that's not everyone's coaching deal. And he's had some great coaches that weren't like that. But I mean, that's just kind of one of the things that I kind of enjoyed when that was part of his journey.
absolutely. And that allows me to self-reflect as well. And because I think a lot of the times for coaches, we just want our players to succeed as well, right? And so therefore you might get really, really into the game. But again, like the veteran coaches will always kind of sit back, chime in when necessary with
Right.
with vocabulary that is familiar, that they've gone over time and time again in practice, right? Which is important. You're not just going to throw out some new concept in the middle of a game, right?
Right.
But
We've never run this play before, but we're
I'm going to run it right now. Yeah. So
Right.
basically, no, that's a lot of self-reflection for me. Very interesting. I've never asked this question on the podcast because we've never had some like yourself, who was a musician who got into the field. But what are some of the lessons in music that you can apply to basketball?
You know, it's funny because I think one of my favorite books, something, and of course I can't think of the name right now on the spot, but anyways, it talks about music being jazz, and I forget, it's like, or basketball being jazz.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? And it's like,
I
you
think-
have
go
to
ahead.
allow the players to improvise, and you have to allow the players to create and react and respond. And when you're on a stage as a musician, sometimes someone's gonna miss it. And if you're married to the, you know, oh, the play is A, B, D, and then D wasn't there, and now we all fall apart, you can't do that. For instance, there have been so many times I was blessed to do a Broadway show, and I remember one time I was on stage and I missed my line, just blanked, couldn't think of it, didn't know what happened. And one of the people said my line for me. There was like, you know, something like, so didn't you think blah, 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 blah? And it brought me back. But had we not been able to improvise and not be able to move, and they were like, he's going to say his line. If he doesn't, the whole show stops and we wait for D to be in place, and then the thing falls apart, then the show would have fallen apart. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
from music, I learned you have to practice your rear end off and then allow for variations and changes to happen, you know, in the moment. You don't want them to, but if they do, we're going to be all right. We're going to adapt, and we're going to make a decision in that moment. So that's how music has helped me.
That's beautiful, because I never really even thought about this. What we describe to my players and my girls is that we want to play jazz, and we don't want to be an orchestra for the most part. If that you as a musician totally understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And so we have different forms of jazz depending on the situation. We have solos, duets, and trios, right? And every now and then Steph Curry needs a solo, right? He's going to go solo. Like he's Miles Davis, right? He's going to go solo. Every now and then you see a quick opportunity for a pick and roll or a handoff. Like that's now you're going to the duets, and you see an off-ball screen happen. That's your trios right there. And so it's what I love, the beauty, what you just mentioned about jazz is I always tell my girls, we want to play jazz. And on this side of the world, they may not always understand what I'm talking about, which is okay. But what I'm trying to say is it's beautiful improv where you're reading and just going. And it could be one person, it could be two people, it could be three people. If it's a dead ball and we're going the other way, maybe it's a quick orchestra into a duet.
Total sense. And that's when some of the most beautiful stuff happens, because I think there was a I was listening to an interview the other day, and Miles Davis was playing some part in someone that had composed a piece anyways, and he could not he messed up the line. He couldn't read it because it was dark in the club or something like that.
Yeah.
And so he played it differently. And that's now how they play the whole piece, even though it was written totally different.
Right.
Because it's like, hey, it worked, so let's just play it this way forever now.
Yeah.
You know?
But it sounded better than what they originally planned.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so let's go and talk a little bit about your books, because I want my listeners to go on Amazon or Audible. That Audible is how I use it, because I love to listen to books. And I want you to talk about the AAU Bible and how did that come about? I mean, obviously your son played a big part in it, but why did you get the inspiration to first write the AAU Bible?
Because when I started, as you know, I was lost. I had no idea what to do, where to go. And, so I started just interviewing, people who were just a few steps ahead, just started asking, hey, what's important? Where should we be? What should we be trying to do? What organizations should we be aligning ourselves with or paying attention to or whatever? And I noticed that there were a lot of parents who had the same questions, had the same concerns and, worries. And so I wrote a book just to kind of share the information, because people were asking, oh, so what are you guys doing? Where are you going? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I wanted to share the information. So that's kind of like the whole reason the book was created.
Awesome. And for someone who hasn't read it, what are maybe one or two lessons out of the book that we can take away? Say there's someone from our side of the world and we would love our child or player, whoever, to go to college in the United States. What's some of the things that we need to be on the lookout for, or what's a piece of advice that you could give us in terms of entering that AAU space?
Entering the AU space, here comes another thing that's kind of, I would say, make sure that you're in the tournaments or in the building with the people, that are going to allow you to be seen by whatever coach or university you want to go to. That's number one. Number two, prepare mentally for that journey, because, it's a pretty heavily competitive space. And know that you can succeed as long as you put in the work. Just know that you can succeed. And then I would say also that you have a lot of cool factor about yourself just from not being from the United States. I would say bank on that. And by that, I mean, most of the coaches and the people that you want to reach out to, they have their email or their school phone number right on their website.
Right.
Contact them. Say, hey, I'm from China or from wherever. I love your program. The one thing I would say is, even if you can't get into those tournaments, learn about the schools that will be in the area, because I know you guys are going to DME area, right?
Yep.
So most of the schools, they will recruit locally. If you watch, you'll see that, hey, a kid that just got this Division I scholarship lives, within a 3 to 4 to 5 state area of that school. That's because, usually they drive to the tournaments, or some cases, if they have bigger budgets, they fly. But for the most part, they're driving to things that they can reach, with a short plane flight and get back home. Right. So, depending on where you're going to go, create relationships with the schools in that area, and focus on them. But yeah, just saying you're from a different country is going to be cool just in and of itself. So use that. Yeah,
absolutely. Good to know. Good to know. And then the second book, which I feel like is probably the most important, is Mental Toughness for Athletes. Why that book? Why did you get the inspiration to write that book? I mean, because it was awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I've got to do this podcast interview more often. But I think because there's so much mentally that happens, with youngsters in the world of youth sports. And by that, I mean, whether it's, other coaches, their own coach, other parents, that maybe they don't have the tools to process at 10, 11, 12, 13. And I've seen it derail some kids, along the way. And I wanted to give them, just some tools, because the other things that I use with Moses, give them some
Yep.
tools to overcome those moments of doubt, self-doubt, insecurity, frustration, fear, by giving them steps that kind of helped him break through that stuff.
Right.
Because it's a lot, as a kid to, have an adult or someone else, say something that might make you feel like, oh crap, I'm, maybe I'm not good, or maybe, whatever,
Yep.
and rebound from that. So,
Right.
yeah.
But was there like a moment where you're like, you know what, I need to document this kind of stuff? And then was there things that you would do with Moses when you go home in terms of like, what's the extra work that you can do? Is it like, maybe it's not physical, maybe it's watching film, maybe it's
Yeah.
visualization, maybe it's really, it's visualizing so that we can tap into that subconscious mind and give it auto suggestion on what is
Yes.
going to really work. Like, can
Yeah.
you, because I'm just trying to visualize you and your son and
Mhm.
the stuff that you would do with him, whether it was a success, whether it was a disappointment. What is some of the stuff that you did with him?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, well, we did all the 8 steps that are in there. That's number one. But then what I would do is, because our kids are so much on YouTube or
Yep.
Instagram or TikTok or whatever, I subscribe to a lot of things that I want them to see, like, the Kobe videos or the, LeBron videos or whoever, that kind of does. The Rock was a big one. And those little clips, I would send him messages either on his phone, a link to the video on his phone, or in our message chat, or send him a link to the video in his Instagram, just kind of say, hey, check this out, or when I like, there's a Derek Jeter documentary out right now on ESPN, and he talks about the exact same stuff we were talking about, saying, hey, I said I was going to be blah, blah, blah when I was 13 years old in this small town where no one had ever done anything in baseball professionally. And everyone was like, you're crazy. Yep. This is not going to happen. I wrote this stuff down. I did, this, and to see someone like that. And the beautiful thing about that our kids have now is all their stars grew up in an age where we had video, where we have pictures. So you can watch, Derek Jeter play basketball or play a baseball at 14, 15, as he talks over his own little league video, saying that's,
mind-blowing. Yep.
Yeah. So the extra work is finding those, and they're really easy if you subscribe to, a couple of channels, and sharing them. Just sharing them. You don't have to talk with them about it. Just share it with them, and that's been really huge.
Right. Now, I was listening to another podcast that you're on, but you have a show. Is that right? You have a podcast or a show, and multiple, NBA All-Stars have been on that show. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't expect you to name drop if you don't want to. That's fine. But what my question is, to be able to talk to all those superstars, legends.
Yeah.
What is something that Troy took away where you were like, there's a pattern going on here? Like, was there one thing in particular to talk to all those great players and be like, hang on a second, he said that, he said that, he said that. And I'm watching Derek Jeter's documentary, and he also said that. Was there anything that stuck out to you?
Yeah. And that's something that I think a lot of youngsters and parents struggle with. But when they say hard work, they mean hard work.
Yeah.
We're not talking about, hey, I went to the gym for an hour and kind of messed around with my friends and put up shots, and then we went to the mall. We're talking like, okay, today, like, for instance, even when he was playing, I think they were saying that Kobe made, not shot, made 1,300 3-pointers every day. Every day. So now I know that, as kids, it's like, that's a lot to think about, but you got to think, okay, and he's a professional, so he has his whole day to do this stuff. But we just start thinking, the beautiful thing about all of them was they broke down their own game. So, Chauncey was like, they were all big into competition. They're all like, I want to be the best at this. And they all broke down their own game. It's like, okay, so I'm shooting free throws. Okay. Yeah, they're going in, but how are they going in? Are they rattling in off the right? Are they rattling off the left? Am I hitting the back iron? Are they bouncing off the front iron? Are they swishing? And if they're swishing, what am I doing with my hand or my elbow or my wrist position? And how can I duplicate that? And now that I know that those are the factors of getting the results that I want, now I'm going to stand here and I'm going to do this, for an hour, hour and a half, just this until I perfect it. And then I will move on to something else.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing that all of them had was they all said there's no secret, it's hard work. And by hard work, it's like, I think most people think, oh, okay, we're going to go down for an hour and work up a sweat and go home. It's like, no, there's that, but then there's also just sitting there and really mastering yourself and your game, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things, I'm just thinking about my own basketball career, and like obviously the same people who you're talking about inspired me a great deal. I think one of the things that young people misunderstand is they mistake long work for deep work. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
and you know what? I was listening to an NBA player when I was younger, and I misunderstood this whole point. Is that when, like when I was younger, Michael Jordan practiced 8 hours a day, right? And so, Michael Jordan's going to practice I'm going to practice 9 hours a day.
Right.
And then I ended up with stress fractures in both my feet because I tried to do that. But anyway, where I'm trying to go with this is that these masters, I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, are able to put their mind in a different world and be one with the work where nothing else matters. And I feel like with a lot of the distractions nowadays with social media and all that kind of stuff, we've lost the ability to do what's called deep work and dive deeply into our craft. And this goes with music. I don't care what it really is. It can go with anything where you are just one with the work. And it doesn't really matter if you're doing it. You don't need to be doing it for 7 hours because you can't do deep work for 7 hours. Masters may be able to do it for 4 hours. Now, when you have the physical component to it, it's a little bit shorter because you're physically taxing. But for me, I feel like I wanted to get your opinion on this is, when you go to the gym, you're not using your phone. The phone is away. You're not even thinking about your phone. It's your ability to dive deeply into that work and be overtaken by that work in order to reach the next level. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. And I agree with what you're saying as far as, when I was saying the hard work, I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. It's not, he did 8, now you need to do 9.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to, perfect hitting. I think there was a guy named Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. He talks about, I would sit there and I'm hitting it off the top corner. Like, I'm just going to master it, shooting it off the top corner. And that doesn't mean I have to run up, down everywhere. It's like, I can sit there and get the rebound, or I can go get the ball, walk and get the ball, come back, shoot, check everything, hit off top corner. It went in and didn't. Okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to master it. Obviously paying attention to your body. If you get tired and you're like, whatever, come back tomorrow. But I think the deep work is exactly what is needed. And that's what I think they were talking about as well. Specifically, Kobe, who was talking, the deep work was his life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, you being a musician is I'm sure you fully understand people who go into the studio, artists who go into the studio and are there for days because they forgot what day it is or whatever it is. And all of a sudden they look up and they're like, oh my God, I've been here for 12 hours or whatever, because they're so engulfed in the work. And it's something that I admire so much about masters of their craft that are able to do that. So no, that's good, because again, you've talked to some very, very successful people in the sports industry and the music industry. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. As parents and coaches, in terms of the mental side, what more do you think what should we be doing or shouldn't be doing to get the most out of our kids?
I think when they're really young, like 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, those are our times to teach them how to mentally fortify themselves, by doing these practices, kind of because I think at that point they're still listening. They're still, you're still, the almighty parent, coach,
Yep.
whatever. I think that's when we need to teach them how to use their minds, allow them to fail, teach them that failure is good, because now we know something that doesn't work.
Right.
It's like, it's okay to fail, but and teach them how to mentally think in difficult situations. I think, in hindsight, at 13 or 14, it's time to let them navigate it a little more than you would when they were, 9, 10, 11, 12. And by that, I mean, asking them, so what do you think we should do? What do you think should be the next step? Because you've already laid the foundation. And I don't know about you, but I can still hear my mom and dad saying, why'd you do that? Today, when I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing, or that I thought was, going to be good, and I knew it wasn't going to work, but I did it anyways, I can still hear my dad, I can still hear my mom saying, yeah, so you knew that wasn't going to work. So let's not do that again,
Right.
So they if you're, caring, and you show them, hey, look, one of the big things that I do with our kids is I say, look, first of all, I want you to be clear and understand that I'm telling you this because I love you.
Right.
And I want to have you to have success.
Yep.
If at any time, you're like, hey, this isn't for me, we're gonna honor that, but I want you to understand that everyone goes through, I always tell them, everyone goes through a love-hate relationship with the thing that they love.
Right. Of course.
You fall in love with it, you have the work part, suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know that I like this. And then you step away, and then you come back and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this. I think that's been like a lot of people. And I told them, my job is to help you navigate the part where you're like, no matter what it is, whether it's music, whether it's, business, whether it's game, whatever it is, my job is to help you navigate the part when it gets tough and you're like, I don't think this is for me. Because I know it is for you, because initially you loved it.
Right.
You'll come back to it. So let's just kind of figure out how to get through this space, where you don't love it, until you get to the other side of it. If that makes
Amazing.
sense, though. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's probably, that crossroads right there is probably the make or break for a lot of people, right? And
Yeah.
it's your ability to be resilient, because the only way you really lose is when you decide to quit, right? You put all that work in.
Exactly.
What do you get back out? Like,
Yes.
Again, it doesn't matter if it's sports, music, business, like it's all the same when it comes to that kind of,
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
You're making me think a lot. And it's,
Oh.
yep, no, because that crossroads right there, because I think there's a moment in your life where it's happened.
Oh, of course.
It could be completely unrelated to music or sports. There's definitely moments in my life where it's happened. And do I look back now and regret? I do, because there were times where I decided to quit, but there was the reason that I do what I do today, Troy, is because there's a quote that says, we are constantly trying to be the person that we never had when we were younger. And that's what
100%. Yeah.
And that's what I try to be every day to the people that the young people, or it doesn't even matter, young or old,
Right.
that I come in contact with. And so that is very powerful. I'm definitely going to think about that, because that is, that moment right there is everything.
It's everything. Yeah. I mean, in a Lewis Howes interview, Kobe talks about a time when he's like, I didn't make 1 point.
Yeah.
My entire, like, you saw that, right? Where
Summer league or something like that. Yeah.
8th grade or something like that.
Yep.
He goes, not a free throw. Like, I didn't make any points. No free throws, no layups, nothing. The whole season.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's like, I'm sure that was a moment where he was like, okay, what are we doing? My dad's, NBA star, all my uncles and whatever played in the league. And here I am, and you know everyone's chirping in his ear, you're not that great, your dad, blah, blah, blah. And I go a whole AAU season and don't score any points.
Right.
That's some those are some conversations, you have with yourself when you're like, what are we doing here? So yeah,
And
crossroads are super important.
you can either step it up or quit or hang it up, right? You can step it up
Yeah,
or hang it up.
yeah. And I think the thing that helped him step through was he had someone, which is what we're trying to be, step up to
Right.
him and say, look, his dad, actually, my dad said to me, look, I don't care what you do, how this works out, if you are successful or not. I just want you to know that I love you no matter what.
Exactly.
And he said in that moment, he was like, oh, well, now that I know that, let's do this,
It's
So, yeah.
it's interesting because as a player, and this is a weird thing. I don't know if you have this for music when you were younger as well, but sometimes we feel like for no reason at all that our parents' love is quantified by our success, which is because we want their approval so much, right? And I think like one thing listening to you talk, I mean, I've heard that interview with Kobe, is that what I can do better with my kids and the people I come in contact with is no matter win or lose, it doesn't change the way about how I feel about you.
Right.
I think that's a huge thing for probably young and old people to be able to know that, you know what, I can do this. And I go home at night and my son doesn't look at me any different. Like I'm still dad. Or I go home and my dad doesn't look at me any different. I'm still son. Right. And so I think that's a big part to have that security, to know that our self-worth isn't dictated by what we do on the court or in the studio or whatever. Right. I think that's huge.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah.
So Troy, you've been so generous with your time. Where can people find out more about the amazing stuff that you have going on?
Oh, wow. Well, a lot of our stuff is on Amazon. You can look at Mental Toughness for Young Athletes. That's on Amazon. And then also we have the AAU Basketball Bible they talked about. That's on Amazon as well. Moses stuff is, I think, at moseshorne.com, but I don't think there's any way to really follow that stuff. But I think those are the big two places. We have an email list that's part of the book thing, and we kind of email once a week, so that's a way to kind of keep in touch. But yeah.
Awesome. All my listeners, you have to follow this guy. Very inspirational, very positive. Turn him on in the morning. He'll ensure that you have a productive and effective day. Last question for you, Troy. What's the impact that you want to have on the world?
I want people to believe that they can do whatever it is that they want to do. That is the number one thing. As a musician, I was told as a kid also, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I just happen to be really blessed to be super stubborn, and to be like, oh, you said I can't do it. Okay, well, then that's exactly what I want to do. I don't know where that came from, but I think there are so many people that miss serving the planet because they just don't do what they love. And with the internet right now, you can support yourself literally doing anything. I mean, I think there was a time, back when I was a kid back in the 80s, when, there may have been some real limitations to what you can do as far as following your heart or your craft or whatever. But with the internet right now, I mean, there are people making a substantial living, training dogs, teaching people how to sew, crochet. I think I was in this business group, and this lady was she was teaching people how to crochet, and she was making six figures with her crochet patterns.
Wow.
It's like, no matter what it is that you want to do now in this golden era of, connectivity, you can do anything you want. I want to encourage people to dig a little deeper and look into how can I, one, serve more people and do what I love. And I want to be a part of that. Yeah.
Or you could be up at 7 a.m. talking to someone from Florida, right?
Exactly.
It's also a good part of the
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Amazing.
Sure.
Troy, you've been so generous. Thank you so much for your time. I'm very, very grateful. You're doing great work. Keep inspiring, because you definitely inspire me a whole lot.
Wow, man. I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot. Truly does. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on to the show. And guys, we will see you next week for our newest episode.
All right.
Just hold the line, Troy.
Yes, sir.